Restrictions have been lifted. Just think about that. Restrictions have been lifted. Or have they? We're going to get to it in a second. But what I'd say about this restrictions being lifted is just think about what life used to be like before all this stuff started. I was with my mum one of the lockdowns or whatever it was, and the restrictions, and she said, I miss going just to the coffee shop and having a coffee with my friends. And I said, Mum, there's things that you can do right now that if you lost them, you would kind of, you'd miss. Like what, Brad? Like sitting out in the garden and enjoying the sunshine and breathing fresh air. See, what we end up doing in our lives is we end up, the time when we really realise how valuable anything that we already have is at the point when we're about to lose it. And I think that this last couple of years should have, in some way, highlighted that nothing is guaranteed. My business, and before all this, was a national business and so forth. And it was, lots of networking meetings across the UK. That's now pretty much gone. However, we are rebuilding, as restrictions start coming off. But it's not just about restrictions in terms of the government and in terms of society about the restrictions. It's also restrictions that you put on yourself. Restrictions that you're not good enough, restrictions that you can't do that, restrictions that you shouldn't start a business, restrictions that you shouldn't make that decision. This is down to you. Where you end up in your life is down to you. And I say this to someone the other day, in that somebody online said, "Well, how are you qualified, Brad? How am I qualified to what? To teach people how to present?" I'm just making it up. In fact, any qualification that anyone's ever had, it's a degree, whether it's a driving qualification, someone clever has made it up. So why don't you take the restrictions off and actually make your own qualification? And if you can do the job, you're qualified, unless, of course, you're a brain surgeon, at which point I'd quite like you 7 years in medical school. But the point I'm making is somewhere along the way is that we put restrictions on ourselves. We let society shape us. We let things shape us. Actually, right now, the thing that should be shaping your life is you. Let this be a message to you that the restrictions are off. The restrictions are off. The restrictions are off. But yet there'll be restrictions that you put on yourself, whether you should do a certain thing, even though you want to. As I said, that something along the way is that this whole last couple of years has proved something, that nothing is guaranteed. Nothing. So that thing that you want to go and do, stop restricting yourself. And I would ask you to really, if restrictions went back on, what would you miss doing? Whatever that thing is, go and do it. Restrictions are off in terms from a UK-wide perspective. And I want you to set the restrictions off for you and your brain. Because when I look at the restrictions that I put on myself, it was a case of, I couldn't start a business off, and people like me don't start businesses off, and people like me don't. I had restrictions, and when I took those restrictions off, my life was good. But those restrictions were placed on by myself. The very person that can take off the restrictions in your life is quite possibly the very person that put those restrictions on. Boys and girls, the restrictions are off. What are you going to do? Now the restrictions are off. An amazing